Good evening. The meeting will now come to order. Welcome to the November 3rd, 2022 meeting of the City of Raleigh Appearance Commission. My name is Chris Roberts, and I am chair of the commission. The Raleigh Appearance Commission is a public body appointed by the City Council that exercises both advisory and quasi-judicial functions. The Appearance Commission's responsibilities relate to zoning and other land use matters, as well as the visual quality and aesthetic characteristics of the city. Today's agenda includes requests for design alternates from the city's Unified Development Ordinance. When hearing requests for design alternates, the Appearance Commission sits as a quasi-judicial body and conducts an evidentiary hearing on the request. That means it's like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this commission must make its decisions. When hearing quasi-judicial matters, the Appearance Commission has 9 regular members and 6 alternate members. The standard the applicant must meet to be granted their request is set forth in the UDO. The Commission hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies the standard when making its decision. The Commission must base its decisions upon competent material and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. This meeting is open to the public and everyone is welcome to watch. However, participation in the evidentiary hearing is limited. Parties have rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Witnesses may testify as to facts to which they are competent to testify, so long as those facts relate to the legal standards. In addition, lay or non-expert witness testimony is limited to facts and not personal preferences or opinions. For certain topics, the Commission needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts on traffic safety. We will now conduct the evidentiary hearings on today's agenda. So we will go ahead and we will now open the evidentiary hearing for item DA-18-2022 on today's agenda. And I believe Casey Evans will introduce this hearing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Before you start, I will swear you in. Casey, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. As you said, the first case on the agenda is DA 18-2022. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of West Cabarrus Street and Southwest Street, with the addresses of 401 West Cabarrus Street, 505 and 513 Southwest Street, and 501 and 514 South Harrington Street. The northern portion of the property is zoned downtown mixed use, 12 stories, in the urban limited frontage and conditional use. And the southern portion of the property is zoned downtown mixed use, 5 stories with the urban limited frontage. The 401 Cabarrus Apartments project is a proposed mixed-use building, including structured parking and intended for commercial and residential uses. The applicant is requesting one design alternate, and that's to reduce the amount of ground story transparency provided on the east building facade, which faces South Harrington Street. The UDO defines how transparency is calculated for each story of the building. Transparency is required for each side of the building facing a public street, and mixed-use buildings in the DX district are required to have a minimum of 66% transparency on the ground story. 50% of that required ground story transparency must be located between 3 and 8 feet. And as you know, there's 2 findings for transparency design alternate, and we have those here for your reference during your discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. All right, the applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and arguments must focus on the applicable standards. Before you begin, please state your name, address in relation to the case for the record.
Sure. Toby Coleman, 150 Fayetteville Street, Suite 2300, Raleigh, here on behalf of the applicant. And with me is Tim Carter with Kimley Horn. Do you want him to go ahead and introduce himself for the record?
Yeah, actually, Toby, if you don't mind, I'll just administer your oath first and then let Tim introduce himself. So do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, great. Thank you. And Tim?
Hi, yeah. Tim Carter, I'm with Kimley Horn, located at 421 Fayetteville Street, Suite 600. That's Raleigh.
And your relation to the case?
Oh, I'm the civil engineer, the engineer of record.
Excellent, thank you. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, very good.
All right. Good afternoon. This is as Casey stated, this is a request for a design alternate for a apartment building, 401 Cabarrus Apartments. It is basically, if you're orienting yourself, here's the map. You've got the railroad tracks. This is the southeast or southwestern side of downtown. So Cabarrus going along the top here. This is the old railway station, the Kane Platform Project, and then this is Southwest Street, and that's Cabarrus. And so the proposal here, as you can see, it's got two main primary streets, which are West Street and Cabarrus Street, and the proposal will actually exceed transparency requirements for the ground floor along those streets. The issue is that you need to have some back of house somewhere, and because of the southern lot line is a zero lot line, we are proposing a design alternate to put most of the back of house things, which have less transparency, along South Harrington Street. You may be familiar with this part of downtown, but South Harrington Street is actually a dead end right here, and it is not a particularly highly used street. You've got a substation right there. And so we thought it'd be ideal. As you can see, the proposal for the eastern facade would have basically the area closest to Cabarrus Street, where you would have likely the most pedestrians, actually have transparency at or above sort of the consistent rate. So, a very transparent area. The purpose of the transparency requirement is to encourage and activate the ground floors. The remainder of the ground floor would be for trash areas, back of house areas, things like that. And here's a close-up of that. You can see the windows in other areas, and then the back of house areas. We are available for questions. Again, we think because we have proposed a project that meets and exceeds the transparency requirements along the ground floor of the two primary streets, which are Cabarrus and West, that this request for a design alternate actually meets the intent and provides some architectural innovation here. Basically, we activate the primary streets and push the stuff that is less activating onto a secondary street, dead-end secondary street, sort of back of house. And with that, we're available for questions.
Let's see. So I think we'll hold on the questions for just a second. So we will now hear from other individuals from the public wishing to provide factual testimony concerning the request. Do we have anybody from the public here? All right, I'll forego that part then. All right, so now, commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant or for staff? I was wondering, do you have a site plan so we can see kind of the streetscape, sidewalk relationship to the building in the presentation, and also a planting plan?
Well, while you're pulling that up, have you guys explored the future of South Harrington and the potential for it to extend south?
So the grade change on Harrington.
Oh, yeah, wouldn't allow it.
It will not allow it
Yeah.
to extend in the future.
And then did you explore the properties on the other side of the street? There really isn't anything except for that transformer.
Yeah, the only thing is the power station on the other side, and then you're directly against the railroad.
Yeah.
So-
And there's no plans for that power station to go anywhere.
No,
Yeah,
not
definitely
that
it's
I'm
not
aware
going
of.
anywhere. Okay, I just wanted to confirm
Not
some
that
of
I'm
those
aware of.
things.
Yeah. So here's the site plan. See if I can zoom in here. We're providing, working with the city to provide, like Toby was saying, our primary streets are West and Cabarrus Street, providing the 16-foot sidewalks along there, and actually quite a bit of a larger sidewalk along West Street, which is what the city had requested, working to provide bike lanes along West Street as well. And then really the back of house here is mainly just for the trash loading area and entrance into the deck. The planting plan would just be providing the required street trees. So along West Street, there's actually a rather large Duke transmission line that runs there. So these trees along West Street would be understory trees, but along the Cabarrus Street, along Harrington Street, we would be providing the larger trees and undergrounding the telecom lines along those street frontages.
Okay, thanks for that.
Got a question. Has there been any conversation with the immediately adjacent property to the south that I think currently is in for rezoning on Harrington Street?
Are you talking about this property right here?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of. Toby, do you?
No, not that I'm aware of. It's sort of as you can appreciate, it's a little bit of an odd request. I don't want to characterize anybody's zoning request, so I'll leave it there. But you've got the, what is the condo there?
It's
I'm blanking on the name of the condo.
The Fairweather?
The Fairweather. So you've got the Fairweather that's the bulk of that. So really, it's a very small limited parcel, but they have not had any conversations with them. So it's not, obviously, as you can see, it's not going to be part of the plan.
I appreciate the thought of moving all of the back of house to be off of the two primary streets. Were any other configurations looked at?
So we originally had provided some type of configuration where we would be coming off of West Street with an entrance, and then also having an entrance off of Harrington. But we were kind of working with the city. The city really wants West Street to be a very heavily pedestrian-focused street with no interaction with vehicles to make it as safe as possible. So we opted to move all of our back of house and entrances off of Harrington Street.
Any other questions? I'll ask the applicant, do you guys have any closing statements or anything further you'd like to share?
No, we're good. Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate the committee's time.
absolutely. Casey, anything else on your end? All right, very good. Thank you for the presentation. So hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the commission will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. As a reminder, the commission is tasked with deciding if, based on the evidence presented, this proposal meets the applicable standards. This decision cannot be based on personal preference of commission members. Rather, it is based on standards and evidence. If, based on its deliberations, the commission requires additional evidence, the commission will reopen the hearing. All right, so we brought it to the
Casey?
table.
Could you pull up the findings just so we can see them?
All right, while Casey's bringing up the findings, would anybody like to start some conversation?
I think the concept of having this transparency that satisfies the requirement on the primary streets makes sense. I think my only, not even hesitation, but just reaction is it is a long stretch of the property that is now not active use, and just wish there was a way to have that tightened up. But it's more so a wish than a
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I totally agree. I think that it makes a lot of sense to use the strategy that they used. But, if we look at number 2, street-facing building facade utilizes other architectural, artistic, or landscape treatments to create visual interest. When I look at the elevation of Harrington, I feel like there could be something there. I kind of don't care. If you look at the plan, there's nothing on the other side of the street, but there really is, because that the railroad line and all the railroad cars and people looking out of the railroad cars are going to see that.
Yeah, we're not, contextual design isn't
Yeah.
fully a part of this conversation.
Yeah.
typically, So.
Yeah. It's a little tricky, but I feel like a green wall or some kind of architectural or artistic treatment could be used there to help, lighten it up a little bit. But generally, I think they did a great job.
Yeah, and to just take this conversation to the end of the path on that, my question about the immediately adjoining property, if that were then to have a, use, they would be going down essentially an alleyway with the substation on one side and then, this on the other. I don't know whether that fits into the findings at all, but that's just part of the reaction.
Yeah, and with the topography, you really don't see this part of the building from, what is that, South Street? Whatever that street to the south is. And that corner at Harrington and Cabarrus has the windows on it, on that east side. So if you're going to put the windows someplace, and yes, there's a lot of back of house spaces, that you need to find someplace to put them. And when you've got a development like this that is on half of a block rather than having 4 sides, then you're forced to try and find the best place for those functions on 3 sides. And I would much rather see those functions on this side than the west or the north side. The fact that it's across from a substation, yeah, I get the railroad tracks and looking out from a railroad car, but
Also didn't see the full building too. You're not going to see the one floor.
you will. And I actually didn't realize, I didn't look through the materials online enough to know that there were street trees along that road, along Harrington. So I'm glad to see that there are, that will do a decent job of blocking that part of the elevation and will force your eye to focus up. And that coupled with the fact that it's a dead-end street. So I really don't take any opposition to the request.
I appreciate the way that they went about the layout of this site as well. I think putting it on Harrington makes the most amount of sense, and I totally agree with everything that's been said as far as the dead end and it's not going to get as much use with what's across the street. I think I am wearing off a little bit on Adam because I was thinking the same thing. I'm having a hard time with number 2. If the stance is that, which is what I heard, is that, well, there's more glass on the other 2 sides, and that's what's offsetting this side, maybe I could get behind that. But I think the finding to me, really totally hasn't been answered, if there are other architectural, artistic treatments, which is kind of what we have to base our decision on.
Yeah. Certainly, it makes sense why they're, it's right across from the transformer station. And I think we can all, there can be reasons to say it really doesn't matter that much, except for the finding that's right there that says, if you're not going to have transparency, if you're going to reduce transparency, then you need to offset it with some other elements. And I guess all I'm saying is I just don't see that they made a case that they did that on this side, unless, like you said, Corey, what they're saying was we did an equivalent amount on the other sides that are important. I kind of heard that, but I didn't see the calculations. So I don't know. I think, I just want to make sure that we're meeting that second finding so that we don't create a precedent.
But they're only looking for a reduction on the first floor, correct? Mm-hmm. And all the other floors are compliant or exceed,
For
correct?
for the transparency?
Yes,
Yeah, but the transparency is
Transparency just for the first.
just for the first.
I understand, but I'm looking at the street-facing building facade. And I mean, that's the whole building. So I'll just keep that open, I guess.
Not at the pedestrian scale.
It's just for this, like, this part right here. This part of the code.
Yeah, I guess from an architectural perspective, I would rather see a clean design that doesn't just interject something like a green screen or
Yeah.
a green wall or something
Yeah.
like that, just to do something to dress up and articulate that facade a little more.
Yeah.
I also, note that lowest story gets shorter and shorter as you go south down Harrington Street.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think I'm just looking for them to tell us what they did to meet that second finding.
Yeah, I don't think the elevations do a great job of illustrating it, but it looks like there is a column expression that they try to introduce some kind of rhythm and movement along that facade.
Yeah.
But I think it just doesn't read well in the drawing that we were given.
Yeah, I see custom color overhead doors, so maybe those doors have some kind of color that repeats or something.
I'd prefer it to disappear.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I'd second that. Do you guys want to open it back up and hear a little more from
Could we,
the
just
applicant?
get an
So
answer,
let's
maybe?
open the hearing back up, and if we could hear from the applicant a little more about the thought of how the second finding that's up on the screen was met in your mind, and maybe tell us a little more about that east facade and the design of it and the intent of colors and textures and insets and so forth.
Sure. So I'll do my best. I'm not the architect. But our intent was to really exceed the transparency on the west side and on the north side, mainly because those are going to be the streets that your pedestrians are going to be walking down. The only pedestrians that are going to be walking down the Harrington side, might be people that are, and honestly, I don't know of many pedestrians that would be walking down that side. There aren't any entrances into the building other than a loading area. The main entrance is on that corner where we're heavily being transparent there, and all the retail along the north side and the west side. That's where all the entrances to the building are. So your pedestrians are not going to be walking down primarily that Harrington Street, especially since it's a dead end street. So our intent was to just exceed on the north and the west side. As far as the colors and material, I don't know that I have enough experience to talk to that for that side.
Yeah, I think we certainly agree with your intent. It makes a lot of sense. We're just looking for an answer for number 2 there.
Yeah, so I guess a couple things. This slide shows how we exceeded on Comparison West. So we're at 72 and 75 overall, and 56 and 54, 3 to 8. So those are the sort of exceeding points. I think that was one question. Also, as noted, going back to this standard, I guess two things. Number one, going backwards. So to the chair's point, the street trees are landscape treatments that will help sort of offset the look and feel of that blank wall area. And then also it is, I think we would agree with Commissioner Lynch that while we are asking for a design alternate from the ground floor transparency requirements, we believe that you can look at, under this provision, look at the overall facade in determining whether we create, we offset the reduction in transparency through other design means. And again, because you don't have much of a lot of pedestrian uses here, you're talking about offsetting for people that may be passing again in various other ways. Looking at the overall street building or overall facade, what you see is a lot of transparency, right? And you see articulation with the decks and other things on the upper floors that sort of offset that lower floor reduction in transparency. So that would be and we're happy to take questions, but that would be how we would address number 2.
Toby, do you know on that elevation there appears to be some insets in the brickwork and things like that, like panels? Do you know about those?
Yes, there are some insets, and if you give me a second, I will. There are some insets. It's not. I don't know that there's here. Why don't you help me?
It should just be.
Yeah, I think it's just standard, though. I don't think there's any. I don't think that we are proposing anything where you would see, like 3 to 5 foot. I think there's column offsets in terms of, there's doors and then columns, but I don't think there's anything where you have a facade locational change. And I apologize, I'm a lawyer, not an architect, so I'm sure I'm misusing terms all over the place.
Are there any trees along that street that are above and beyond what's required, or is it kind
No,
of what's
I don't
required
believe
along
so.
the
Tim?
streetscape?
No, that's just what's meeting the street tree requirement along there. But as you can see from if I can,
And what are they?
oh, that's a good
Spacing?
question. So, as you can see, they're spaced at the required spacing, 1 tree per every 40 feet. So actually, because, of this loading area here, there's a few trees that are kind of, stacked up closer together than what they normally would be because of this loading area right here. So,
What are they?
Quercus lorata,
Are they low? or-
overcoat oaks.
they're oaks.
Okay.
Like a mid-height oak, common street tree. Good selection, but yeah.
And the doors that are all kind of white on the facade that your eye tends to migrate to, says custom color. I mean, do we know anything about that? Is there anything special about that, or they're just trying to show that there's?
So I do know that the apartment complex is supposed to be a luxury apartment complex. So their intention for quite everything on the building is to be higher end. They really want this to look good for the public, especially since it's going to be, a new high rise in the area. So, yeah, that's as far as I know is about the material.
Any other questions before we close the hearing again? All right, let's go ahead and bring the matter back to the table. More discussion?
I think I'm there on just the concept of prioritizing the active streets. I do half wish there was a way to, move some of those doors around and have one of those panels be a mural or something like that as a means just
Right.
to speak to number 2, as we've seen a number of other back of house projects within the downtown space do well as a means to mitigate that. But I hear the argument that there's not much activity other than all of the cars that are going to be serviced from this building driving past that every single time, but
Yeah. I think, we can move on, but I think, sure, it would have been nice to have an architect, the building architect here that we could talk to about. Usually that helps because they can speak to what the design was. It's a transparency design adjustment. I don't know why the building architect isn't present to speak to the building.
and to the luxury comment, that would only enhance doing some type of treatment on this backside would only enhance the experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, potentially. So I'm still on Kyle's camp of making it just disappear. I mean, I really would like to see that side just disappear.
Yeah, disappear or
And
be amenitized. Either way, I just want an answer.
And the fact
from
that
the architect.
no, I don't disagree that the architect should be here to speak. And I just looked at the planting plan, and those trees are less than 20 feet apart,
Yeah, they're really close.
which is nice to have. It's more than doubled up along the length that, or compared to the standard. So
Yeah, it'll cover it up pretty good.
I almost wonder if we could put a condition on this that those custom colors did help that whole facade just kind of blend together and
Yeah,
disappear.
disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
I mean, I'm
totally
game for a
that.
condition if it's something that you think would be meaningful, and I lean on the architects for that one.
Yeah, I think we don't want, I would personally wouldn't want a contrasting color there like it's shown right now. I mean, I would want it to go away and match as closely or be in that same color range.
Do you want to open it up and see if our if they'd be amenable to something?
Oh, we can. The architect's not here, so I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, it's
They may not have a preference one way or the other. Catherine, when we do put a condition on something like this, do you usually get their buy-in?
Yeah, I think it might, their attorney's here, you could ask if it's just, typically you have to make sure that they can do it. It's just a color thing, but I think
Yeah.
that would be good to ask them. And then also, if you guys can just, when you get there, let me know if these are all overhead doors or it looks like there's a couple different types, so.
I would say all the entire facade.
I would say all doors.
Basically, make that entire facade that doesn't have any transparency disappear.
Overhead doors and man doors.
So it should be the entire facade, what you're looking for is the entire facade and including any doors should be the same color?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, Hugh.
I think we can probably limit it to overhead doors and man doors. I don't want anybody to
Is that conflicting with another part of the code anywhere? Or
I
is-
don't think there's anything in the code that talks about color. But I'm also not I'll defer that to Casey.
All right, let's open the hearing back up, and Toby, I'll ask you if you have any issues with us having a condition on an approval to have the overhead doors and the man doors painted a similar color to the rest of that facade, the brick along that facade.
Yeah, that's fine. I actually just checked with the developer. That's fine.
Was that the intent, do you know?
I did not ask that question, so I don't want to represent anything that's incorrect, but
Okay.
it makes sense to me.
Okay, very good.
Um,
Thank you. Casey, anything that you know of that would go against what we're going to put a condition on?
No.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's bring the matter back to the table. To that second finding, I buy into the fact that we've got more transparency along the west and north faces than is needed, and I would rather have that along those active streets than try and space out some of these back of house spaces and have less transparency on those facades just to meet the intent of the UDO. That coupled with all the transparency, even though it's not at ground level, all the transparency that's on this eastern facade, I could get behind those two things really meeting the intent of number two.
I'd agree. I think there's logic and then there's code, and so I think it's just really trying to find something to hang your hat on with number two. And I think with the increased landscape, with the increase, with them being closer together, since you don't have them at the loading area, I think that kind of does it for me. So I'm kind of fine with it.
Yeah.
Also with that suggestion that all of those man and overhead doors are in a closely matching color to the facade.
So are we saying all the doors are the same color and they are similar to the brick facade?
Yes,
Can we write something like that?
yes.
It might be a little bit more specific. So they should all be the same, I think similar, I mean, here's the deal. Somebody has to pick this up and enforce
Right.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that enough guidance for them to know what it was intended?
I think so.
And
Similar color to the brick.
with the intent that it is to
Eliminates
not
contrast.
stand out. Yeah, not contrast. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, so that's still a little bit just, the person, that's a little bit subjective still.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to our
So is
world.
it, can it be, you know what
Put in
color
quotes,
the brick is now?
non-contrasting.
You
Well, it
don't-
doesn't matter. They can change it. It's just that the doors, all the doors, the color of the doors are similar to the brick facade with the intent that there is no contrast.
So do you, okay, okay, hold on.
That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that this doesn't include the storefront
Right. Yeah.
along that facade, because we don't want to limit them to
Yeah.
their storefront along that facade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
With that, I think we can say number 2 is answered, and I'd be happy to move on.
Okay.
Thanks for
Just out of
entertaining me.
curiosity, what is the zoning for the property next to it? Do you know, Will? What the request is?
It's requested 12-story CX, I believe.
Same
12-story
as this. Wow,
on a tiny little piece.
interesting.
That's between Fairweather and this?
All right, any other comments, or would anybody like to make a motion?
I'm finishing
Oh,
up
yeah.
your condition here really quickly. Okay, you might need to help me a little bit here, but here's what I have. The overhead doors and man doors on the eastern building facade facing South Harrington Street shall be the same or substantially the same color as the color of the brick on the eastern building facade, with the intent that the color of the overhead doors and man doors and the color of the brick on the eastern facade, I have here, do not contrast. Is that what, are not in contrast?
Yeah, I think so. I think the substantially the same part was good. That kind of nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we could make it more vague. I assume it's going to be brick, but we could just vagify the just facade, whatever the facade is, because it might not be brick. I think we're assuming it's brick, but.
Of the remainder, okay, hold on one second. Well, I think they said it was brick.
Did they?
Di-
Okay.
Toby, do you want to confirm that the rest is brick?
I believe that the architectural plan shows brick. I don't quite know off the top of my head whether
Whatever,
that
that
binds
doesn't
you to
matter.
anything as part of the site plan or not. I mean, I would recommend siding or something. I don't know what they're quite, cladding?
You could just say facade.
The overall
Building
facade.
Just say of the
the-
remainder of the facade,
Yeah.
same
The
color.
The primary facade, maybe.
There we go. I'll say that.
It is brick. It's on the elevation. Brick wall.
Oh, nice.
I misspoke earlier. It's 20 stories. Rezoning. DX 20.
20.
And lay brick wall.
Okay, so I'm going to read it one more time for you quickly.
Yes, please.
The overhead doors and man doors on the eastern building facade facing South Harrington Street shall be the same or substantially the same color as the color of the primary facade on the eastern building facade, with the intent that the color of the overhead doors and man doors and the color of the primary facade on the eastern building facade are not in contrast.
Okay.
Sounds good. I will make a motion to approve the request with the condition that Catherine just read.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes. Thank you so much. The commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to such notice following adoption of the decision. All right, we will now open evidentiary hearing for item DA-20-2022 on today's agenda. And Casey will once again introduce this hearing.
All right. The subject property here is located at 5100 Forestville Road, which is located at the southwest corner of Forestville Road and Buffalo Road. The property is zoned commercial mixed use, 3 stories, conditional use. The Sheetz project is a proposed general building for a new Sheetz fuel station, convenience store, and drive-through restaurant. The applicant is requesting 3 design alternates. A design alternate to reduce the transparency of the proposed glass windows on the north and east facades of the north and east sides of the building. A design alternate to reduce the amount of ground story transparency on the north side of the building, which faces Buffalo Road. And a design alternate to allow the service area to be located in front of the building. Again, the UDO defines how transparency is calculated, including that 50% of the required ground story transparency be located between 3 and 8 feet. Transparency is required for each side of the building that faces a public street, and general buildings in the CX district are required to have a minimum of 33% transparency on the ground story. The UDO also requires that glass be at least 80% transparent to be considered transparent for the purposes of the transparency requirement. There are 2 design alternate findings for transparency that must be satisfied for the request. For the service area request, the UDO requires that service areas, which are things like the trash, recycling type of facilities, be located to the side or the rear of the building, and that they must be screened by solid walls and gates, and the materials must be compatible with the principal building. In this case, the applicant is proposing the service area be located in front of the building. There are 4 findings related to the landscaping and service area screening requirements, and they are here for your reference. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. All right, the applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and arguments must focus on the applicable standards. Before you begin, please state for the record your name, address in relation to the case, and I will administer an oath for anybody that's going to be speaking.
Do you want to do the oaths just at the beginning?
Yeah,
everybody?
might as well.
Sounds good. I'm a lawyer, so it'll just be these 2.
Sure. Brian Downs, 156 Pineland Circle, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm an engineering permit project manager for Sheetz.
Okay, great. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mark Phillips with Paps Design Group. We're the engineer of record, 107 Fayetteville Street, Suite 200, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mark, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And if you would just state your name address in relation to the case? And I won't need to swear
Yes,
you
I'm
in.
Samuel Morris. I'm a lawyer at Longleaf Law Partners, and we represent the applicant and development group in this case.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Roberts, and good afternoon, members of the Appearance Commission. Again, my name is Samuel Morris with Longleaf Law Partners here on behalf of the applicant group. I'm joined today by Brian Downs, property manager with Sheets, as well as Mark Phillips with Pabst Design Group, who are the engineers on this project. Before we get started, Brian's going to come up and just give a few words about Sheets. He's a local project manager, just to give you guys a little bit of context about the project and where we're coming from.
Good afternoon. As mentioned, I'm an engineering permit project manager at Sheets, which means I get to take projects from real estate, lead them through entitlements, hand them off to construction. In that, I get to oversee the civil components of the project and help lead our in-house architecture as well. Sheets was founded in 1952. It's a family-owned company. We have about 650 stores across 6 states. We entered North Carolina in 2024. And we have 105 stores currently. So by store count, it's our second largest. So hopefully y'all visited us. In the Raleigh area, we have about 25 stores within I-540. But at this point, I'm going to hand it back off to the experts. Happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, with that, we'll get started on our requests. We're here today requesting a few design alternates related to the development, as you know, of a Sheets at 5100 Forestville Road in a way that meets the technical requirements of the UDO's transparency and service area regulations, but also that recognizes the practical realities of developing and operating a business and building of this type. The first request, as you heard, is related to, we'll call it translucency, in order to differentiate. So essentially the UDO requires 80% light transmittance in order to be considered truly transparent and thereby meet the regulations. Sheets uses a low energy type glazing that only has a light transmittance of 38%. So we're requesting a 42% reduction to that 80% requirement. The second request has to do with square footage requirements related to transparency, similar to the request you just heard, where on the front elevation of the Sheets building, which faces Buffalo Road, between 3 and 8 feet, the UDO would require 208 square feet. And due to, we'll discuss a little further on why it's the case, only around 197 could be provided with the product that Sheets uses. And the final request has to do with the location of the trash service area, and that's due to a number of site constraints that was forced to be moved to what is technically considered the front of the building, where the UDO would ordinarily require that to be placed on the side or the rear. So here's an aerial of the property. This is 5100 Forestville Road, located in northeast Raleigh. It's a large 25-acre tract that's currently in the process of being subdivided and developed as a large shopping center. You all are probably familiar with this property. You just heard a case on it last month, the Publix and some of those associated buildings along the rear of the property. That's just the zoning. Casey gave a good overview at CX3. But here's where our parcel is located. So we're up at the corner of this large tract, and this parcel is set to be 2.12 acres on the corner of Buffalo and Forestville. Here's some context with the larger development plans. As you just pointed out, Sheets is up at the corner. That Publix that you all are familiar with, pushed towards the back of the property. And there's McDonald's planned up on lot 3. And I believe they're still in the process of filling all those buildings and getting that leased out. But ultimately, this is one piece of a larger shopping center that's going here. So here you can see the site plan for the property. Like Casey mentioned, it's what you think of as a Sheets, kind of gas and convenience, as well as restaurant type uses. There will be a drive-through component to this building. as you can see, wrapping around that southwestern corner. Here's a look at the proposed elevations of the Sheets building. The one on top is what we'll call the front north elevation that faces Buffalo Road. I'll flip back just for reference. That front face facing Buffalo Road is the top. And the one on the bottom is the side elevation facing Forestville Road. And our design alternate request relates to the area between 3 and 8 feet of that top elevation. Here is kind of a stock rendering from Sheets that shows you what it looks like for someone standing on the ground looking at this building. So that brings us to our first request, which is that translucency request. And so this pertains to both sides of the building. So all transparency on the building will utilize this Pilkington Eclipse Advantage bronze glazing. So everywhere you see that's showing glazing here will be that slightly reduced glazing material. So the reasoning behind, there's a number of reasons why Sheets stores use what they call, or what is called, solar control low energy glazing, often shorthand as low E glazing. This is a little graphic from Vitro Glass Education Center that's just sort of a visual representation of the visible light spectrum and has some visuals and explanations about kind of how glass interacts with light. All of that to say that for purposes of reducing energy consumption, that it is generally accepted that, and as it says here on the graphic, ideal glass is one that has highest levels of visibility with the lowest levels of infrared coming in and heating, whether that's light and heat coming in to your building. And so, as I mentioned, we are proposing to use what is called a solar-controlled low-E glazing. And from the same source, you can see on the side that solar control low-E glazing is the ideal type for that is designed to, as it says, transmit high amounts of visible light and reflect infrared. Obviously, you're having to compromise on the amount of transmittance. You're dropping it below, obviously, 80% or almost entirely translucent, but doing so in a way that keeps it up, where it's not totally reflective, still 30, 40-ish% transmittance, but really getting that infrared way down. So that's where this is coming from. Here's a quick kind of screenshot from the Pilkington product website that shows you the Eclipse Advantage bronze glazing product that we intend to use. And it does meet the external reflection requirements of the UDO, which is 11%, or maybe it's 12, but it's right there at what the UDO requires. So it's not going to be any more reflective from an external perspective than the UDO allows. And so here's just a list of many reasons. This is from the Pilkington website, but from Sheets' perspective, there's a number of very legitimate reasons why they choose to use this type of glazing, not just on this building, but on all of their buildings. Obviously, the first and foremost is a significant reduction in energy cost and usage. When you have this low E glazing, you're using much less energy to keep the building cool. That saves money and reduces the individual building's carbon footprint. And then if you kind of take that to scale with Sheets as a whole, that using this product cuts down cost and carbon footprint of Sheets across the country in a major way. So that is important to them. Another thing, it prevents product spoilage and damage that's caused by heat and light coming in to the building. It contributes to the comfort of both employees and patrons when you're in a kind of convenience store setting like this. It's better to have kind of higher levels of control over the amount of light and heat coming in, and that kind of increased control over solar and thermal conditions in the building it's something that is important to this type of business and this type of building that operates both as a restaurant, a convenience store, a gas station. There's a lot of people moving in and out. There's raw food. There's all sorts of food products. So having that kind of control over the amount of light and heat in the building is very important. we'll go through just a couple, here's like another stock rendering just to kind of reorient you, but show you some photos too of what this bronze Pilkington kind of bronze low E glazing looks like. As you can see, it's kind of tinted, a little bit more tinted than, what you think of as purely transparent glazing, and has, a little bit of a reflectant quality. But all of that, as we say, is sort of reducing that overall light transmission in order to pick up infrared reflection and have much better control over the internal temperature and light, thereby reducing energy costs, carbon footprint, etc. Here's a picture of it at night for reference too. So overall, we think that this proposed low energy glazing is consistent with the spirit and purpose of the UDO's transparency regulations. It, on the whole meets the requirements. It's see-through. It provides the type of visual interest that you're looking for in glazing, but it also accommodates the needs of Sheetz' unique type of business, and furthers the goal of reducing overall energy usage, both for economic and environmental reasons. Regarding the second standard, the proposed building utilizes a number of different architectural materials and finishes. Here's 8 different, snapshots of the different types of finishes, whether it's from the awnings, the bricks, the kind of masonry stone that runs along the bottom. There's, a significant breakup along both facades, but this along both facades, because this translucency request does pertain to both facades. In addition, there's also a cupola, some fencing, outdoor seating area. That's just the rendering, but I can run back to the actual. Those things are all there as well. So the things you're seeing on the rendering will be there. That cupola, the fencing, the outdoor seating, and that's in addition to this, just kind of consistent breaking up of the wall through a diversity of architectural products. So we'll shoot back to. So in addition to the architectural additions that we have in order to kind of create this visual interest and offset the reduction of transparency, there's also a significant amount of landscaping, some existing and some will be new. Those kind of larger circles that you see where it's labeled as shade tree on the key, you can see them on the corners of the buildings. Those will all be new shade trees that are planted at a 10-foot minimum. And then you can also see the kind of existing lighter gray circles are all trees that are already existing that will be maintained. And importantly, that entire rectangular area, that block along Buffalo Road, is tree conservation area that has been designated as part of the subdivision. That was set aside as tree conservation area. And so that creates a significant buffer between Buffalo Road and the front of the Sheetz building. And then, here's a colorized version of that, so you can get a little bit of a better view and see that, there's a consistent pattern of landscaping around the entire building, which creates visual interest, breaks up the views from the right-of-way, and in addition to all of that architectural kind of definition that does exist on the building, when you add the landscaping to it, we think that definitely offsets that reduced translucency and will make it minimally perceivable for the average pedestrian. That takes us to our second request, which is also related to the windows and transparency. This has to do with the amount of transparency provided. As I mentioned at the top, we have provided only 197 of the UDO's 208 square feet of transparency between 3 and 8 feet on the front elevation. Those green and yellow highlighted areas, the green is just showing you where we do comply. On both elevations on the east side, we comply well over the UDO requirements. And then on the front side, we do meet the requirements between 0 and 12, but it's that 197 that doesn't quite reach the 208 number, which is approximately 95%. 95% compliance. So we do believe that given the kind of limited nature of this request that the 11 square foot design alternate is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the transparency requirements, given that it is only 11 square feet of the 208 that's required. We're, like I said, 95% compliance there. The need to do this is largely driven by Sheets has, standard products, and it's hard to just kind of tweak things here and there. So what they do is they use the product they have, and they try to get as close to the UDO requirement as possible without having a kind of unsightly configuration and just plopping windows where they probably don't belong. So they put this together and got it as close as they could to that 208 number, and that was that 197. So we feel like that we did everything we could, got it as close as we can with the product we have. And again, on top of that, there's quite a bit of glazing that doesn't count here. There's both below 3 feet and above 12. That's your 12 mark. There's your 3. So you've got glazing both below and above that, and some over here. We think that adds and contributes to the fact that this is consistent. And additionally, both of these are substantially set back from the road, and there's a number of intervening structures and landscaping. And so, moving on to the second standard on this one, again, you've already seen these, but for the same reasons, it has, a diversity of architectural products that break up the look of the building from the exterior. It'll have cupola, awning, fencing, outdoor dining area. Not a lot of blank wall space, really breaks it up and keeps it visually interesting. And again, we'll pop back to this rendering that includes those gas pumps and kind of shows you what it looks like if you're standing at the edge of the property. And your instinct, it doesn't look like it's not a lot of blank wall space. From a pedestrian standpoint, it appears to be quite a bit of glazing being provided. And again, we won't go back through this, but pointing out the landscaping again. Obviously, this request is limited to that front side, just highlighting those new trees going in, maintaining that tree conservation area, and the substantial setback from Buffalo Road. So we think all of those things create visual interest that offset the reduction in transparency in order to meet that second standard. And to our final request, which is the dumpster location. We are requesting complete relief from the trash/recycling collection location. As I mentioned earlier, the UDO requires that to be on the side or rear of the building, but due to site constraints, it is placed on what is technically the front of the building, right here. So there's a number of reasons that the dumpster had to be located in this position, in this kind of northwestern portion. The drive-through on the rear portion of the building here. The access right here was a major factor. The underground gas collection area right here is a major factor. The temporary conservation area, it limits development. And then, as we'll see in a moment, emergency service vehicle and trash truck routes were another major factor in the location of this. So from a high level, obviously, the tree conservation area was sort of where it all started. That pushes the building back because you got to get your gas pumps in the front. And so that's what kind of pushes the building into that back corner. We've, of course, included the drive-through there, and it's not particularly practical or desirable to include a trash truck collection area back there. There's no real way a trash truck can fit, and it would detrimentally disturb the flow of traffic related to that. So you can effectively cut off this entire area as a possibility. Due to driveway spacing requirements and other kind of traffic-related factors, it was important for staff for this driveway to be pushed back away from the Buffalo Road and Forestville intersection, kind of as far to the rear of the property as we could possibly do. So that really cuts off the only other rear portion of the property that would be available is back here. However, the traffic concerns related to the driveway or sort of trump the desire to, or really ability to put any kind of dumpster area back there. It would just be too tight with that existing driveway. and staff has made clear that that's where the driveway should be located. And then you add on top of that this is the underground gas collection area up in this corner and the tree conservation. So you've effectively eliminated these areas. So what you're left with is that northwest corner for your dumpster area location. The final consideration was these truck routes and emergency vehicle routes. So this is the truck route, just to say that locating the dumpster in a place where the trash truck does not have to cut through and across areas where pedestrians will regularly be walking, to try to keep it concentrated on one portion of the property, rather than having them go all the way across the property, interfering with the underground gas storage or otherwise interfering with pedestrians trying to access the building. So to just try to keep this as a clean, tight route as possible. And then you have the emergency vehicle route, which is also a factor of why this driveway is located where it is, just to have a clean, unobstructed route for emergency vehicles to enter and exit the property in a safe way. So here's a colorized, kind of closer look showing our proposed dumpster location. And we'll take a closer look at the exact landscaping plan, but this is just to show you that substantial steps have been made to include new landscaping and position this and design it in a way that it's not obstructing or interfering with the Buffalo Road right-of-way. This is just a private access road for the property right here. That's not a public road. So although there may be some level of pedestrian interaction there, that is a private access drive, and so we favored the dumpster area towards that and away from Buffalo Road, included those two large shade trees. The dumpster area is also required to be enclosed and screened under the UDO. We don't need to go into the fine details of this, but this is just to show the proposed layout of the dumpster area that will be entirely screened and rather spacious. Here's an elevation drawing that shows you that, it will be look decent and match the building, the screening materials. And then finally, kind of the key aspect of this request is the landscaping that we're providing around the dumpster area. So there's existing trees here, here, here. We're going to add a big 10-foot tall at-planting pistacia tree, which is a deciduous tree. But then we are also going to completely line, as you can see, the dumpster area with evergreen shrubs. That's both camellias on the north and south side, which at maturity will get up to 6 to 8 feet. And then on the back side are arborvitaes, which at maturity will be 10 to 15 feet. So you'll have 6 to 8 on the north and south, and then 10 to 15 on the back side. And that's in addition to that screening material that matches the building. So all of that together, we think, does a very good job of visually screening and creating some interest that offsets the location of the dumpster and makes it, visually appealing and, less obstructive or noticeable to the average pedestrian. So for all those reasons, we think that locating the dumpster in this particular spot is consistent with the spirit and purpose of the ordinance when you take into consideration those site constraints, that it will not negatively affect the comfort and safety of pedestrians because it's been pushed off of Forestville Road, and the closest road is that internal access drive, which will be overwhelmingly majority of people using that will be just accessing it with vehicles. We also have provided other landscaping and architectural materials to offset the location of the dumpster as we just walked through. We have a number of both shade deciduous trees and then screening evergreen shrubs that collectively will create a visual landscaping kind of treatment that makes it more visually appealing. And the final standard is that the proposal is equal to or greater than the design that would conform, And for many of the reasons we just explained, that for safety reasons and for general site design, that a dumpster located at the rear of this building is neither practical nor particularly desirable. And so this is the safest and most practical design, and for those reasons it is equal to or greater than a design that reaches compliance. And so that concludes our presentation. Those are our 3 requests. Again, we have Brian with Sheets and Mark with Pabst Design here to answer any kind of more specific questions you may have about the site. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. We will now hear from other individuals wishing to provide factual testimony concerning the request. So this would be the public. Is there anybody from the public here to speak on this case today? All right. Hearing none, moving on. Commissioners, let's open it up for questions.
I just had one quick point of clarification. I think you mentioned that there were camellias around the trash enclosure, but it says Blue Point juniper on there. I don't know if you want to clarify that.
Yeah, at the time this package was put together, we're in the process of the ASR review. Obviously, our most current plan, we've actually changed the plant types. So I just updated him right before the presentation.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Well, yeah, okay, thanks.
I appreciate the presentation and all the exhibits. I think that was very helpful. The question, I guess, with the building and the transparency, there's a rendering that showed kind of a black area below the windows. I'm guessing that was just a mess up in the rendering. It's just solid black kind of.
That was, stock rendering. So to the extent that any of these kind of renderings are inconsistent with, so right there is what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yep,
kind of
no, those
black.
are clear on ours. So if you see there, those are provided as transparent on ours. So the elevation controls and any of those renderings, those are stock photos.
Yeah, gotcha.
We would say trust the elevation. Yes, sir.
I think one exhibit that we're missing really is the plan view of, I'm assuming that there's product display behind the windows to the north side. Is that correct? Is that why the sills are so high on those windows?
That's correct. Our beverage counter, so our coffee machines, our milkshake, our soft serve, is all located along that wall. Yes.
Leading the witness.
Leading the yeah, and I appreciate the extra effort to put, even though it doesn't meet in the lower area that, we have had requests in the past, and they're doing a good job of it already, is raising those up so you do get the light deep into the space, which I appreciate. I think that's a little better architecture. A little bit of questionable with the amount of translucency, I guess. If I buy that or not, I totally am all about the energy savings. But, we also have awnings and other things, that could possibly be at different angles or block some of that sun a little bit more. I don't know. I don't know if you want to speak to that anymore.
It is part of our energy efficiency along with LED, and it is a request we've made previously. Our most recent store, 703 Generosity, just off of Jones Sausage, also included that as part of our design adjustment and our standard package.
Related to that, Corey, so I'm actually a little confused why we even have 80% in the UDO. I was going to offer it up as a text change suggestion to staff, honestly, because the glass that we put in projects today, anything that's got any sort of energy conservation, low E, is nowhere near 80%. Like, we might be getting over 60% in some cases, but and that's like with a clear, maybe with a light tint on it. So, and I think the 15% reflectance is also good to have, but it's also pretty hard to achieve that. I'm surprised we don't see more of those requests come to us. And I don't know if it's just something that staff maybe overlook some cases because they know it's so difficult to achieve, or if everybody's just putting in really bad glass.
No, I'm totally with you. I have a hard time as well, and we do end up spending a lot of money on glass that owners don't want to use, and it's still hard to meet, almost really impossible to meet those requirements, especially if you don't have any kind of overhangs or anything over that glass, and can take some of those, allowances to kind of reduce that number. But I do understand that, I think the intent, my guess is the intent is really to make it for patrons to be able to see in and feel comfortable and safe, being able to see in and see if some, display product, and, if it's a retail shop or they're selling food and candy. I mean, to be able to see in is a good thing. I think the number is a little ridiculous from city-wise. I'd back you on that, but.
And to be able to see, and you're talking about that reflectance, the 15%. Yeah, because I think.
I mean, at night it's one thing, right? But during the day, to be able to see in a little bit easier when it's just a little hazy outside, to be able to see in and see product and see people moving and movement. It's a little bit of a safety thing as well, I think.
Yeah, I'd have to look back at like some of the technical information we've got, but it seems like when you get to 15% reflectance or below, you're like in the mid-iron to low iron range. I don't know that this product is, but agreed. I mean, it's a good thing to have at that level, especially for retail function, so people can see in, see what's behind the glass. So it's the 80% that I really have an issue with, that I think we should look more at as a city. Any other questions? All right, any final comments from the applicant?
Nope, I think we're good.
Anything further from staff? Casey? Nope. All right, hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the commission will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. As a reminder, this commission is tasked with deciding if, based on the evidence presented, this proposal meets the applicable standards. This decision cannot be based on the personal preference of commission members. Rather, it is based on standards and evidence. If, based on its deliberations, the commission requires additional evidence, the commission will reopen the hearing. All right, who would like to start?
I think they've more than met 2 and 3 from transparency and other architectural treatments provided beyond the 3 foot to 8 foot range. And then on 3, yeah, makes sense. They've done a pretty thoughtful job of screening and materials. And I defer to the architects on the commission on translucency.
Yeah, I agree with you, Will. And on the transparency and being 11 square feet short, I mean, the other part of the finding is street-facing building facade uses other architectural, artistic, or landscape treatments to create visual interest, offset that reduction in transparency. And I think just the amount of articulation, may love it, may hate it, there's a lot going on the elevation. So I think you could argue that there are other architectural treatments that would offset that lack of transparency. So I don't have anything further.
Yeah. I think the only comment that I have is not like related to approval, but I would just recommend that you don't put camellias on the south side of that trash enclosure. They'll just die. So maybe just use one of the other trees and wrap it around the south side there. Otherwise, seems good to me.
Is the camellia what's on our plans, or the camellia?
No, the camellia I think is what you replace the Blue Point junipers for. That's probably good because those aren't really available. So the arborvitae is fine. Make sure you get that cultivar because all the other arborvitaes are like 15 feet wide. And so get that narrow cultivar and then wrap it around the south side. Should be good to go.
that was going to be my question to you is how do you feel about the screening? That's really my only thing is on
Yeah.
this backside of that dumpster.
Yeah. I
That it's
mean-
adequately screened, and I don't have a problem with its location. I think it makes sense with the layout, and
Yeah.
we've seen similar things. I just want to make sure that it is screened in a nice, tactful way.
Certainly isn't my favorite, but it does the job.
Yeah.
Meets the requirements.
Yeah. And I'll say, I agree with the architectural treatments in the building. I think, they, like you said, love it or hate it, I think they do go above and beyond what the normal facility such as this would do, and they take the extra effort, which I appreciate. I do like the higher glass, allowing light deeper into the space, and I think it makes for a much better environment for people, not only outside but inside as well. So I appreciate that. I think I can get behind all these as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate that screening of the trash enclosure is a brick rather than
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
else.
I'd rather just see the trash enclosure, but the plants are fine too.
Coming from the landscape.
I know, it
architect.
makes a little, add some bird habitat or something on those arborvitae. Well, it sounds like I can make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thanks for the presentation again. Thank you. The commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to such notice following adoption of the decision. All right, so that does it for the cases for the evening. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 6th. If everybody's had a chance to read those. The only revision that I saw is that I am not listed as being absent at that meeting, but I was. So if you could just add that. And I will defer to the others to make a motion to approve since I wasn't there.
Yeah, I took a look at it. It looked good.
Catherine, that's actually a question for you. So when I'm not there,
You
I
are
still-
allowed to vote on them. Is that your question?
well, no, it was actually for the approval, the final approval. So when I get the DocuSign, I'm the one signing something that I wasn't at. Should it go to the person who chaired that meeting instead?
Good question. So what the general statute says is that the chair or other duly authorized person signs them. It's not specific. What you're signing is that's the decision that the board voted and approved on, and that's the final written decision.
Okay.
So I think it's fine for you to sign it, especially since you're here and voted on the minutes as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thanks.
I'll just add that it doesn't say that I was here or absent, so I don't believe I was here either, so I was absent, so we can just make that change. I'm not supposed to be here anymore.
All right, would anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. Thank you, guys. So then, left on the agenda, report of the commission's attorney. Catherine, do you have anything for us?
I do not.
Report of the chair and or vice chair. Adam, anything that you want to add to this?
Thanks for everyone who came out to Sir Walter Raleigh Awards ceremony. We had a great time. I feel like it was a really good event. I think, my goal for next year is to keep that attendance coming up. But post-COVID, I think it was a really good event. And loved the music, appreciated everybody's efforts. So, thank you.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, Casey, we're doing a debrief the next meeting on Sir Walter, talking through that in a little more detail.
Yes, that is the plan, the meeting in 2 weeks.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, no, great job pulling all of that together to both of you, Adam and Casey. And I know we've got 3 open positions on the commission right now. And I know Adam's been in contact with a couple applicants that we believe are going to be good additions. And so, Casey, I don't know how quickly those hit the clerk's office. If you could reach out and see if they've got new applications and send those to Adam and I, that would be great.
So when they have, like basically before any upcoming council meeting, when there's a vacancy on a commission, they send out to the staff liaisons to those commissions the list of basically what I've been sending to you, saying these are the applications that they have and that the council will be considering the applicants for the vacancies at that upcoming meeting.
Do they need to have those names to get onto the agenda, like well in advance?
I think it happens pretty quickly.
It does.
When's the next council meeting?
I don't know the date.
Yeah, I don't
of
know.
that.
The 15th. November 15th is the
So
next
we got
council.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I think they normally send them out like a week before, and then for the upcoming meeting, if that makes sense. I think it's like a week before.
Okay.
So it's pretty quick prior.
Okay. All right. Very good.
So will you send us that when it comes to you?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, when I
Thank you.
get that, I forward that on. And based on the last couple, it's been the same handful of people on
Yeah.
the list. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully we got some new ones next time. We
Yeah.
should have some new ones.
See
Next
some
time.
new ones next time.
And then if anybody knows anybody else that would be good to have on the commission, I'm thinking another transportation person, another landscape architect,
Yeah.
anything
know
like that.
anybody,
Please reach out to your friends and encourage them to submit. Encourage them to watch one of these recorded meetings so they know kind of what we do, and or have them feel free to call myself or Adam, or I'm happy to reach out to them too, just so then they know what this is all about. Any other business for the night?
Oh, Casey, when are we hearing presentation of the legacy project? I know it's coming up, right?
Yeah, so the NC State team is scheduled, or we're planning to have them present on the initial report at the second appearance commission meeting in December.
Is that
I
a
wanna say it's
QJ
like the
meeting
15th.
or?
No.
Okay, so they'll be up in that little room. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the first report, which is like the assessment, existing conditions type of report.
Okay, thank you.
Any other business?
I'll just encourage everybody to, if they haven't already, to go vote.
All right.
Voting day
call.
is coming up.
Good call.
Casey, should we invite Tina to give an update as well at that meeting?
Yeah. I will just say I spent some time with Tina recently and got an update from her. And she has a website now called placemakingRaleigh.com. And it's got all the information, and she's doing really well. She is looking for contacts in neighborhoods outside of the ones she knows, so she can try and do what we asked her to do, which is have events outside of the neighborhoods she's already having events. But she seems like she's doing well.
Do you want something from her at the December meeting?
Didn't we make it one of her 2 requirements that
We might
she
have.
come back at mid-year to give an update? So
We might have, yeah.
I'm happy to be liaison there, but
Yeah, I can reach out to her and see if she's available either maybe for the meeting in a couple weeks or the December meeting, depending on which will work better. So.
perfect.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned.